Welcome back to Storyteller Pro, the channel where we unravel the most spine-chilling tales of cinema. Today, we're diving deep into Hereditary, a film that doesn't just scare you, it leaves a mark on your soul. Prepare yourself for an emotional, nail-biting journey through a story of grief, family secrets, and unimaginable horror. But before we begin, make sure to subscribe to Storyteller Pro. Hit the bell icon so you never miss our breakdowns of the world's most gripping films. Now, let's begin. The story begins with death. Ellen Lee, the matriarch of the Graham family, has passed away. At her funeral, her daughter Annie delivers an unsettling eulogy. Her tone is distant, almost clinical, as she speaks about her mother's secretive and controlling nature. She had her rituals, Annie says, her words dripping with unspoken resentment and pain. Annie's husband Steve and her teenage son Peter sit quietly in the pews. But it's her youngest daughter Charlie who stands out. Charlie is peculiar. Her vacant gaze, her constant tongue clicking, and her strange fascination with crafting eerie dolls out of household objects all make her unsettling. She was Ellen's favorite, and Annie makes no effort to hide her discomfort about that. As the family returns home, Ellen's presence lingers. Annie feels it most in her studio, where she works on miniature dioramas for her art exhibitions. Her creations eerily reflect her life, as if she's trying to process her emotions through tiny frozen moments. One day, she enters her studio to find a diorama she doesn't remember making. A hospital room, a woman on her deathbed. Annie freezes, a chill running down her spine. Charlie begins exhibiting increasingly bizarre behavior. She insists on sleeping in the treehouse, even in the freezing cold. She spends hours crafting disturbing figures from random objects, muttering about how Grandma wanted her to. One day, she finds a dead bird outside her classroom. Without hesitation, she cuts off its head with scissors and pockets it. Annie starts seeing strange symbols etched into the house's walls. At first, she dismisses them as harmless graffiti left by the previous owners, but their intricate design suggests something ritualistic. One evening, Peter is invited to a high school party. Annie, suspicious but overprotective, insists he take Charlie with him. Peter reluctantly agrees, dragging his younger sister along. At the party, Peter disappears upstairs to smoke marijuana, leaving Charlie alone. Charlie finds a slice of cake and eats it, unaware it contains nuts. Soon, she begins gasping for air, clutching her throat. She stumbles upstairs to find Peter, who panics and rushes her to the car. He speeds down the dark, empty road, his voice trembling as he begs her to hold on. But Charlie's gasps grow more desperate. She rolls down the window, leaning out for air. Peter swerves to avoid a dead animal, and bam! Charlie's head collides with a telephone pole. The car screeches to a halt, but Peter doesn't move. His hands grip the wheel, his eyes wide with shock. Slowly, he drives home and parks the car in the driveway. Without a word, he climbs into bed, leaving Charlie's lifeless, headless body in the backseat. The next morning, Annie's screams echo through the house. Her grief is raw, visceral, and haunting. The camera lingers on Charlie's decapitated head, lying in the road, covered in ants. Before we move forward, if you're finding this breakdown as intense and gripping as the film itself, don't forget to like this video. It helps us reach more movie lovers like you, and your support means the world to us. Now, let's uncover the deeper horrors waiting for the Graham family. Charlie's death fractures the family. Annie becomes consumed by grief, spending hours in her studio, isolating herself from Steve and Peter. Peter, guilt-ridden, begins to unravel. He hears Charlie's tongue clicking in the dead of night and sees fleeting shadows in the corners of his room. Annie starts attending a grief support group where she meets Joan, a warm and understanding woman. Joan listens patiently as Annie recounts her family's troubled history, her father's suicide, her brother's schizophrenia, and her mother's domineering presence. Joan offers comfort, but she also introduces Annie to something else, a seance. Joan claims the seance can help Annie connect with Charlie. Skeptical but desperate, Annie agrees. One night, she gathers Steve and Peter at the dining table. The seance begins with a candle and a glass. At first, the movements are subtle, but soon, the energy in the room shifts. Annie's voice changes, her body convulses, and Peter begins to panic. "Mom, stop!" he yells, but Annie is too far gone. The seance unleashes something dark and malevolent into their lives. As Annie delves deeper into her mother's past, she uncovers horrifying truths. Ellen was the leader of a secret occult group devoted to summoning a demon named Paimon. This demon, she learns, requires a male host, a vulnerable body to inhabit. Annie realizes with mounting dread that her family has been manipulated for generations. Ellen's rituals, her obsession with Charlie, and the strange occurrences in the house were all part of a plan to fulfill Paimon's prophecy. The final act of the film is a relentless descent into madness. Annie becomes possessed, her behavior growing increasingly violent. One night, Peter wakes up to find her standing over his bed, her face twisted with rage. She later confesses in a dream that she never wanted Peter, that she even tried to miscarry him. Peter is tormented by visions of Charlie, his guilt consuming him. One day, he looks into the reflection of a school window and sees his own face smiling back at him. He snaps, breaking down in the classroom, his screams echoing in the eerie silence. At home, Annie discovers Ellen's decapitated body in the attic, surrounded by candles and occult symbols. The stench of decay is overwhelming, and flies buzz in the dim light. Annie finally realizes the truth. Her family is doomed. The climax reaches a fever pitch when Annie, fully possessed, chases Peter through the house. He locks himself in the attic, but the horror waiting there is unbearable. Cult members stand silently, their blank faces illuminated by candlelight. Annie, floating above the attic door, decapitates herself with a piano wire. Peter, unable to take any more, leaps out of the attic window. His body lies motionless on the ground until a glowing light enters him. He rises, his expression blank, now fully possessed by Paimon. The final scene takes place in the treehouse, where the cult performs their ritual. Peter kneels before an altar surrounded by the headless bodies of his mother and grandmother. Joan crowns him as King Paimon, welcoming him into the world. The film ends with an eerie calm, leaving the audience with a deep sense of dread. And that concludes the story of Hereditary, a tale of generational trauma, manipulation, and the terrifying consequences of uncovering the truth. What would you have done in Annie's place? Could you face the reality of your family's dark legacy, or would you succumb to the same fate? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this breakdown, please like this video and subscribe to Storyteller Pro for more gripping movie explanations. Hit that bell icon to stay notified, and we'll see you next time for another dive into cinema's most haunting stories.